A wealthy company owner was astonished when he encountered a young African-American child during a job interview. "My dad is ill, so I've come to take his place," the boy explained. The CEO responded dismissively, "I apologize, young man, but there appears to be a misunderstanding. This position is for an overnight custodian, not for minors." William Sterling's words resonated throughout his luxurious office space, his piercing blue gaze examining the teenager who stood in front of his executive workstation. Kevin Johnson gripped his father's work bag firmly, his hands shaking slightly, not from nervousness but from suppressed anger he had mastered hiding from childhood. "Indeed, sir, I understand. My dad, Jerome Johnson, had an appointment scheduled for 3 o'clock this afternoon. He's hospitalized with lung infection, which is why I've arrived on his behalf." Sterling reclined in his expensive Italian chair, a patronizing grin spreading across his face. As the head of Sterling Corporation, among the nation's biggest industrial cleaning companies, he encountered odd circumstances regularly, but this situation seemed absurd. "Son, that's not the way business operates. Return home and inform your father to arrange a new appointment once he recovers." "With respect, sir, my father requires this employment opportunity immediately. We're 3 months overdue on our housing payments, and his factory position was eliminated when his illness began." Kevin maintained his composed tone, his dark eyes directly meeting the executive's stare. "I possess the ability to perform his duties and can begin immediately." Sterling released a cruel chuckle. "You're 15 years old. You cannot legally perform overnight work. Furthermore," he stopped, allowing his bias to linger in the atmosphere like poisonous fog. "This type of labor demands experience you simply lack." At that instant, something shifted in Kevin's expression. He was no longer the desperate child pleading for an opportunity. He had become someone who understood precisely what tactics were being employed. "You're correct about one aspect," he stated calmly, opening his documents and extracting an envelope. "I'm not 15, I'm 17, and here's my corrected birth documentation." Sterling scowled but accepted the paperwork. It appeared authentic. "Even so, that doesn't alter the reality that I'm black." Kevin completed the statement the CEO lacked the bravery to finish. "You're accurate, that remains unchanged. However, what also remains constant is that your security infrastructure has a significant vulnerability in the building's eastern section that permits unauthorized entry between 10 and 11 at night, when guards patrol the parking area." The quietness that ensued was overwhelming. Sterling felt color drain from his face. "How did you—" "Conduct research, Mr. Sterling. The same investigation that revealed Sterling Corporation faces FBI scrutiny for corruption in government contracts, and that you seek trustworthy workers for shifts where certain irregularities require overlooking." Kevin closed his documents with a smile that failed to reach his eyes. "My father remains unaware of these matters. He simply desires honest employment to provide for his family. However, he paused meaningfully, notice details most people disregard." William Sterling observed this youth, clearly no typical teenager, and understood he had completely misread the circumstances. Actually, he began suspecting that Kevin Johnson possessed considerably more knowledge about Sterling Corporation than any adolescent should. Sterling clenched his hand on the desk, his knuckles becoming pale. "Listen here, kid, I'm uncertain what scheme you're attempting, but it ends immediately. Security!" He pressed the communication button forcefully. Kevin remained still, that unsettling smile persisting on his lips. "Before your guards arrive, you might want to learn how I discovered the arrangement with Concrete Solutions, the one where you overcharge the government by 40% and divide the profits." The CEO felt blood leave his face. That agreement was secured by 3 legal layers and confidential paperwork. You have no idea what you're discussing. Last Thursday's gathering, 6 o'clock evening, conference room on the 22nd floor. You stated, and I quote, "Provided the paperwork vanishes before the federal examination, we can maintain this operation for 5 more years." Kevin tilted his head. "Should I continue? Or would you prefer I discuss the $500,000 in foreign accounts?" Sterling felt his knees weaken. How could a 17-year-old possess such precise information about discussions held in soundproof chambers? That's impossible. Nobody else attended that meeting. You're right, Kevin confirmed quietly. No one else occupied the room, but someone was inside the ventilation shaft performing air conditioning maintenance. He paused theatrically. My father, Jerome Johnson, works for the cleaning and repair company you contracted last month. The realization struck like a hammer blow. Sterling vaguely recalled approving the hiring of a small maintenance business, cheaper than major corporations. He never considered he was employing his own surveillance team. My father is an honorable man, Mr. Sterling. He cleans your offices, repairs your equipment, and would never question why you consistently schedule crucial meetings on days when he works alone in the facility. Kevin crossed his legs, adopting a more comfortable position. But I am not my father. Sterling attempted to regain authority over the situation. Even if that were accurate, you possess no evidence. These are merely accusations. Kevin retrieved a small recording device from his briefcase, recording from Thursday, 6:14 p.m. Crystal clear sound quality, courtesy of the microphone I positioned in the ventilation system 3 weeks ago. He activated playback. Sterling's unmistakable voice filled the office. Provided the paperwork vanishes before the federal examination, we can maintain this scheme for 5 more years. The FBI won't discover anything if nothing exists to find. Sterling felt his world crumbling. How dare you? How dare I what? Document federal violations. Kevin deactivated the recorder. Actually, I possess 17 similar recordings from the past 2 months, each more incriminating than the previous. The CEO realized he had severely misjudged the situation. This wasn't a desperate teenager seeking employment. This was someone who had carefully planned every action. What are your demands? Originally simply employment for my father. Kevin rose and approached the floor-to-ceiling window. However, your responses have revealed something intriguing, Mr. Sterling. Not only are you corrupt, but you're foolish enough to undervalue people based on their skin tone. Sterling made one final attempt at intimidation. You believe you can extort me? I am William Sterling. My family constructed this empire across 3 generations. And I am Kevin Johnson, son of a custodian you wouldn't acknowledge in the elevator. Kevin turned to confront him. The distinction is that while you inherited your authority, I had to cultivate my intellect to survive. The boy walked to the bookshelf, running his fingers across expensive volumes Sterling had likely never opened. You know what I discovered growing up in poverty, Mr. Sterling? That people like you consistently make identical errors. You equate poverty with stupidity. While you slept in luxury, I studied in public libraries until closing time. While you inherited connections, I built knowledge. And while you played business with your father's money, I learned to observe, listen, and record my adversaries' every action. Sterling swallowed with difficulty. What do you truly want? Kevin smiled, but this time something genuinely threatening appeared in that expression. Now that's the appropriate question, because what I desire, Mr. Sterling, extends far beyond a simple janitor's position. Each new humiliation Sterling attempted to inflict only fueled something within Kevin that the arrogant CEO couldn't comprehend. A silent force nourished by the very injustice they tried to perpetuate, transforming every act of disdain into energy for retaliation that would completely reshape the rules of that power struggle. Kevin sat again, this time with the posture of someone negotiating as an equal. "What I want, Mr. Sterling, is quite straightforward. I want you to comprehend that people like me don't exist merely to clean up your messes, literally and figuratively." Sterling tried to reclaim some authority. "Listen, kid, even with those recordings, you have no concept of who you're confronting. I can ruin your life and your father's with a single phone call." "Can you?" Kevin chuckled softly. "Interesting, because I've spent the last 3 months documenting not only your conversations, but also your routines. For instance, every Thursday at 9 o'clock, you meet Rebecca Martinez at the Grand View Hotel, room 312. Sterling's blood turned cold. Rebecca was a senator's wife, and this extramarital relationship could destroy not only his marriage, but also his most profitable political contracts. How did you— "No more," Kevin finished, "because while you thought you were contracting a cleaning service, you were actually providing someone who understands the difference between opportunity and coincidence, complete building access." Kevin removed a tablet from his briefcase and scrolled through photographs. "Here you are exiting the hotel with Ms. Martinez. Here's the $500,000 transfer to her account, probably to keep her silent about something. And here," he paused dramatically, "is the phone conversation where you promise her husband a $2 million contract in exchange for passing environmental legislation that would benefit your factories." Sterling felt his legs buckle. That's blackmail." "No, Mr. Sterling, this is documentation. Blackmail would be if I wanted money." Kevin calmly stored the tablet. "But money is precisely what I don't want." The office door opened and Sterling's assistant entered nervously. "Mr. Sterling, there's an attorney here claiming he has an appointment with you. Dr. Michael Thompson from Thompson & Associates." Sterling frowned. "I didn't schedule any meeting." "Actually," Kevin stood, "I did." A black man in his 40s entered the office, impeccably dressed, leather briefcase, confident demeanor. Sterling recognized him immediately. Michael Thompson was one of the city's most respected and feared attorneys, specializing in civil rights and corporate corruption cases. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling." Dr. Thompson greeted him with a professional smile. "Kevin told me about your fascinating conversation." Sterling looked incredulously between Kevin and the lawyer. "You two are acquainted?" "Kevin is my nephew," Dr. Thompson replied calmly, sitting beside the boy. "And for the past 3 months, he's been my most effective unofficial investigator." The realization hit like a crushing weight. Kevin wasn't just an intelligent teenager trying to help his father. He was part of a much larger and more sophisticated operation. "You see, Mr. Sterling," Dr. Thompson continued, "my office has received several complaints about irregular practices at Sterling Corporation. Initially, we lacked sufficient evidence for a formal investigation." Kevin smiled. "Until my father obtained the cleaning contract here." "Kevin suggested a creative approach to evidence gathering," the lawyer explained. "All within legal boundaries, naturally. After all, conversations in a workplace where employees are present are not technically private." Sterling realized he had fallen into a carefully orchestrated trap. You cannot use that in court. It was obtained illegally. Dr. Thompson laughed. "Mr. Sterling, my nephew is a minor working with his father in an environment where he was legally authorized to be. All recordings were made in the workplace during business hours. There is nothing illegal about that." Kevin leaned forward. You know what your greatest mistake was, Mr. Sterling. Assuming that because my father is a janitor, we would be simple too. You never investigated our family. You never asked questions. If you had, you would have discovered that my uncle holds a law degree from Harvard, that my cousin works for the FBI, and that I myself have been accepted to 3 universities with full scholarships. Sterling's arrogance began to completely crumble. What do you want? Dr. Thompson opened his briefcase methodically. First, a complete written confession of your corruption schemes. Second, restitution of all funds embezzled from federal contracts. Third, full cooperation with federal authorities. In exchange, Kevin added, we will consider not revealing the evidence of your extramarital affairs and the kickback scheme you built with local politicians. Sterling attempted one last desperate gamble. No one will believe your word against mine. Kevin and Dr. Thompson exchanged amused glances. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer said calmly, you still don't understand the situation. We don't need anyone's word. Kevin pulled out a second tablet, this one connected to a portable projector. Because in addition to all the recordings, we have something even better. The screen illuminated, showing images from security cameras Sterling didn't know existed. Conversations, secret meetings, money transfers, all documented in high-quality video. As part of the maintenance contract, we installed an upgraded security system throughout the building, Kevin explained with a smile that finally revealed the true extent of his intelligence. Cameras so small and advanced that not even your own security guards knew they existed. Sterling sank into his chair, finally realizing that he wasn't facing a desperate teenager, but a professional investigative operation that had used his own arrogance and prejudice against him. Dr. Thompson closed the folder with a decisive snap. So, Mr. Sterling, shall we discuss the terms of your cooperation? Every word of contempt Sterling had directed at Kevin now echoed in his mind like a professional death sentence. The boy he had underestimated because of his skin color and economic situation had meticulously orchestrated his downfall, turning every act of prejudice into evidence of the moral and criminal corruption he tried to hide behind an expensive suit and family inheritance. Sterling stared at the images on the screen, his face alternating between pale and red. This is invasion of privacy. I'm going to sue you for what exactly? Dr. Thompson interrupted calmly. For installing security equipment on a property for which we have a legal maintenance contract? For documenting criminal activities that we witnessed in the course of our duties. Kevin pressed another button on the tablet. This one's my favorite, he said, showing a video of Sterling openly discussing how to eliminate a smaller competitor through illegal political pressure. Recorded last Tuesday during your private lunch with the Public Works Commissioner. You don't understand, Sterling stammered, sweat beginning to form on his forehead. I have connections. I can end your careers with one phone call. Dr. Thompson laughed genuinely. Mr. Sterling, let me clarify something. While you were busy underestimating a simple janitor and his son, we were building a federal case. Kevin stood up, walking over to the panoramic window. You know what his biggest mistake was? It wasn't just the racism, although that made everything much easier for us. His biggest mistake was thinking that being rich meant being smart. For 3 months, Dr. Thompson continued, you discussed federal crimes in front of my brother Jerome, a man you consider so inferior that you don't even notice his presence in the room. Sterling tried one last desperate gambit. Even if you have evidence, it will never see the light of day in court. I have judges, prosecutors. Kevin turned, smiling for the first time with genuine amusement. Oh, you're referring to Judge Martinez. the one who received $50,000 in campaign contributions in exchange for favorable rulings. The tablet displayed another recording, Sterling handing an envelope to a man in a judge's robe. Or perhaps you're talking about Prosecutor Williams, who shelved investigations into your companies in exchange for that consulting contract for his wife. Another recording, Sterling, easily recognizable, discussing amounts and deadlines. Dr. Thompson opened a different folder. Mr. Sterling, this evidence isn't going to a local court. It's going straight to the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Senate Ethics Committee. Sterling sank into his chair, reality finally penetrating his arrogance. You planned this from the beginning. Actually, Kevin corrected, you planned this. We just documented it. Kevin returned to his tablet, navigating through dozens of meticulously organized files. Here are your conversations with senators about changes to environmental laws. Here, the bribes for contract approvals. And this folder here, he paused dramatically, contains your entire money laundering network through shell companies. Sterling tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't respond. How did you get access to your personal computers, your bank accounts, your private emails? Kevin smiled. Mr. Sterling, for 3 months, you allowed a simple black janitor to have unrestricted access to your building. My father cleaned your desk, emptied your trash, had keys to every office. Dr. Thompson added, and Kevin has a degree in information systems with a specialization in digital security, a degree he completed online while working to support his family, something you would have discovered if you weren't blinded by prejudice. Sterling's phone rang. He looked at the screen, FBI, Agent Crawford. His hands shook as he answered. Mr. Sterling, this is Agent Crawford with the FBI. I need you to remain in your office. We are on our way with search and seizure warrants. Sterling dropped the phone. What? I don't... Kevin walked over to him, crouching down to be at eye level with the devastated CEO. You know what impresses me the most, Mr. Sterling? Throughout our entire conversation, you haven't once asked about my father. You haven't asked if he's getting better, if he needs medical attention, if he can afford the hospital, even now facing the complete destruction of everything you've built through corruption and crime. All you can think about is yourself. Dr. Thompson methodically gathered his things. The recordings have been delivered simultaneously to the FBI, the IRS, the District Attorney's Office, and 3 major newspapers. In approximately, he glanced at his watch, 15 minutes, the first report will be published online. Sterling looked out the window, seeing news vans already positioning themselves in front of the building. You've destroyed my life. Kevin straightened up, his dignified posture contrasting with the desperation of the man before him. No, Mr. Sterling, we merely documented how you destroyed your own life through criminal choices and prejudice. The difference, added Dr. Thompson, is that when you destroy lives, it's out of greed and arrogance. When we act, it's out of justice. Sterling tried one last pathetic plea. Please, I can make it up to you. I can pay. Kevin shook his head slowly. Mr. Sterling, 3 hours ago, you wouldn't have hired my father as a janitor because we were that kind of people. Now you want to negotiate with us as equals. The time for negotiation ended when you chose crime as your business model and racism as your filter for seeing the world. Sirens could be heard approaching the building. Kevin and Dr. Thompson headed for the door. One last thing, Mr. Sterling. Kevin turned back one final time. My father really was sick. Severe pneumonia caused by working in unsanitary conditions for a pittance while people like you profit millions from corruption. He's recovering well in the hospital, and when he gets out, he'll have an honest job waiting for him, far away from people like you." Sterling stood alone in his marble and glass office, the corrupt empire he believed to be untouchable, crumbling around him like a house of cards, while the sound of sirens grew louder, heralding the end of decades of impunity masked by expensive suits and racist arrogance. Every word of contempt he had directed at that black kid now echoed as proof of his own stupidity, which had blinded him to the intelligence, preparation, and support network he had fatally underestimated, turning his discrimination into the catalyst for his own destruction. 6 months later, Kevin Johnson was sitting in the front row of Harvard University's main auditorium, receiving a full scholarship to study law. The same boy Sterling had considered unfit to clean floors was now considered one of the most promising young people in the country. The ceremony was broadcast live, and among the online viewers was William Sterling, watching from his cell in federal prison, sentenced to 15 years for corruption, money laundering, and racketeering. He had lost everything: his company, his mansion, his family, and most importantly, the respect he thought his wealth had guaranteed him forever. Jerome Johnson, fully recovered from pneumonia, now supervised the maintenance staff at the very university where his son would study. Delicious irony, the man Sterling considered too lowly to notice now managed the care of one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. "Dad," Kevin said on the phone after the ceremony, "thank you for teaching me that honest work is nothing to be ashamed of." "And thank you for teaching me," Jerome replied, his voice breaking, "that intelligence has no color, no social class, and no limitations imposed by those who fear true greatness." Dr. Michael Thompson, now a senior partner at one of the country's most respected law firms, had specialized in corporate discrimination cases. His victory against Sterling had set legal precedents that would protect thousands of workers in the future. The Sterling Corporation was sold at a judicial auction. Ironically, it was acquired by a consortium of small Black and Latino business owners who transformed the company into a model of inclusion and business ethics. The marble and glass building now housed job training programs for young people from the inner city. Rebecca Martinez, Sterling's mistress, cooperated with authorities in exchange for immunity. Her husband, the senator, resigned in scandal. The web of corruption that sustained Sterling collapsed like dominoes, taking dozens of corrupt politicians and businessmen with it. 3 years passed. Kevin, now in his senior year at Harvard, was interning at his uncle's law firm, already famous for never losing a racial discrimination case. His specialty: companies that underestimated employees because of prejudice and ended up discovering too late the price of their arrogance. Sterling, meanwhile, had aged quickly in prison. His former powerful friends ignored him completely. His former employees testified against him in exchange for plea bargains. The man who once believed that money and skin color determined a person's worth now depended on the charity of his cellmates for basic protection. One winter afternoon, Kevin visited the federal prison, not out of revenge or cruelty, but to personally deliver a copy of his graduation thesis, "How Systematic Prejudice Destroys Companies," a case study of Sterling Corporation. Sterling, gray-haired, orange uniform, handcuffed, looked at the young man he had despised with such disdain. "Why?" was all he could ask. Kevin replied calmly, "Because you taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. That ignorance masquerading as superiority is the most dangerous weakness a person can have. My father raised me to believe that hard work, education, and character are more important than inheritance, skin color, or bank account. You tried to convince me otherwise. Thank you for confirming that my father was right." Sterling hung his head. finally understanding the full extent of his downfall. He hadn't just lost money or status. He had lost the opportunity to meet extraordinary people because he chose to see only stereotypes. Kevin left the prison and drove to the hospital where it all began. Jerome was visiting former colleagues who were still recovering from work accidents. Father and son embraced each other for a long time in the hallway where, 3 years earlier, a boy had decided that other people's prejudices would not define his future. "Do you know what his biggest mistake was?" Kevin asked his father. "What was it?" "He confused privilege with intelligence, money with value, and skin color with competence. When you make those 3 mistakes together, it doesn't matter how much power you have. You've already lost." Jerome smiled. "And what was our greatest victory?" "Proving that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you," Kevin replied. "It's building something greater than they could ever imagine." Years later, when they told this story, people always asked Kevin if he felt any pleasure at Sterling's downfall. His answer was always the same: "I feel gratitude. He showed me exactly the kind of person I never want to become." True justice wasn't Sterling in prison, but Kevin turning discrimination into motivation, prejudice into purpose, and injustice into inspiration for thousands of young people who learned that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. Determination does. If this story of how prejudice can completely blind you to true greatness touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that intelligence and character always win out over arrogance and unfair privilege. Because in the end, those who judge by appearances always miss out on meeting extraordinary people.